There's this strangely universal human experience that happens right in the very first moments of the day.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly where you're going with this.
Right. It's this phenomenon where, like, before your feet have even touched the floor, you're already losing a battle.
The morning panic.
Exactly. Picture the sequence, right? The alarm sounds, it pulls you out of your sleep, you open your eyes, and there's this brief, maybe 3-second window of pure neutrality.
It's blissful, but it doesn't last.
No, it never does. Because habit takes over. You reach over to the nightstand and you grab your phone. I mean, we all do it.
Almost involuntarily at this point.
Yeah. The screen lights up the dark room, and boom, there it is, a glaring notification.
A stressful text, a news alert.
Or, maybe it's an email from a colleague with that very specific passive-aggressive tone that just instantly puts you on the defensive.
Oh, the worst.
Or maybe it's even more mundane, like you casually open your bank app and the number staring back at you is just far below the threshold you internally need to feel safe.
And the reaction in that moment is profound because it's never just a mental acknowledgement, It's not just, oh, I see a fact.
Right, your body reacts.
Completely. It triggers this entire physiological cascade because the body, it doesn't actually distinguish between a digital number on a screen and like a physical threat in the room.
Wait, really? It treats it the same?
Yeah, exactly the same. Cortisol just floods your system. Your heart rate accelerates marginally, your breathing gets shallow, and your muscles literally prepare for an invisible conflict.
That is so true. You can feel it. Your stomach physically drops, your chest tightens.
And you haven't even had a sip of coffee yet.
I haven't even spoken a single word out loud. The sun might not even be fully up, but my entire reality has just been painted with this thick, heavy brush of panic.
It sets the tone for everything.
It does. And what really fascinates me is the automatic cognitive process that follows that physical drop. The brain instantly tries to negotiate with the panic, right?
Oh, absolutely. The internal monologue kicks in.
Yeah. The thought is always some variation of, I need to fix this. You lie there. You construct this narrative like, I need to work harder today. I am trying to be successful. I'm trying to get ahead.
I'm trying to build a better life so I don't feel this knot in my stomach anymore.
Exactly. That specific feeling of trying.
And that specific internal monologue is the ultimate morning trap.
Why is it a trap, though? Because it feels so proactive.
That's exactly why it's so difficult to escape. Because it feels completely justified. It feels like the responsible adult mechanism for survival, right?
Yeah, I mean, society applauds that reaction. We call it ambition or drive.
We do. You observe a problem, you feel the stress, and you resolve to try harder. But this is exactly where the collection of personal development documents we're exploring today completely inverts our understanding of human agency.
This is the core of our detailed analysis today because it's so counterintuitive.
Highly counterintuitive. The texts we're examining propose that this seemingly noble resolution to try is actually structurally flawed.
So our mission for this in-depth conversation is to unpack the mechanics of that exact flaw. We have this fascinating stack of documents here that suggest something almost offensively simple at first glance.
But profoundly complex when you really look at it.
Right. They argue that this very human reaction, this intense feeling of trying to fix your life, trying to be wealthy, trying to be healthy, is actually the hidden mechanism keeping you stuck.
Keeping you entirely trapped in the exact situation you're so desperate to escape.
Which just sounds crazy at first.
Yeah.
So break down the central thesis of these texts for us.
Well, it operates on this premise that human beings aren't just passively observing a fixed reality. Instead, we are continuously generating our own reality through our assumptions.
Generating it, not just walking through it.
Exactly. The friction we experience every day stems from a fundamental misinterpretation of the external world. We look at our environment, the bank account, the stressful job, the traffic.
And we see it as this objective, concrete reality that we have to battle against.
Right. We see ourselves as victims of circumstance, like we were just dropped into a pre-existing board game where our only defense is to push and strive and try.
But these documents assert something very different about the vibration of trying, right?
They do. They assert that the very act of trying implies an inherent, undeniable state of lack.
Let's follow that logic, because that's a massive philosophical shift. If I am trying to be rich,
then you are simultaneously broadcasting the indisputable fact that you are currently poor.
Oh, wow. So the effort itself is a confession of absence.
Precisely. The mechanics detailed in these writings are uncompromising on this. Your internal world, your core assumptions, your dominant emotional states dictates your external world.
So the external world has no power to create anything on its own.
None whatsoever. It is entirely reflective. There's only one reflection that reality can give you, and it has to be a perfect mathematical match to your internal state.
So if I embody the energetic signature of a person who is constantly trying to be wealthy,
Reality has no choice but to perfectly manifest a life where you are perpetually, endlessly trying to be wealthy.
it's just going to give me more opportunities to try.
Exactly. The universe will supply you with endless struggles, endless near misses, unexpected expenses. It keeps you on the treadmill.
Because you can't try to be something if you want to actually experience it. You just have to be it.
Or not be it. The state of trying is a destination unto itself, and it's a really exhausting destination.
Man, it's the equivalent of running on a treadmill and getting furious that the scenery in your living room isn't changing.
That is a perfect way to put it.
The sweat is real, the exhaustion is palpable, but the forward momentum is totally an illusion.
And if that underlying premise is true, that the external reality is just a mirror reflecting our assumptions, it exposes this massive systemic misunderstanding about how change works.
Which brings us to the mirror analogy from the documents. I love this part because it illustrates the absurdity of how we normally operate.
It really is the foundational bedrock you need to understand this whole framework. So consider your current life in its totality.
Everything you can touch, see, measure.
Right. Your living situation, your health, your social circle. The texts say all of this is functionally identical to a physical reflection in a mirror.
Okay, so imagine I'm standing in front of my bathroom mirror.
Yes. You look at your reflection, and you notice that the reflection has a deep, angry frown on its face.
Right.
What is your mechanical response if you want to change that reflection?
Well, I certainly wouldn't reach out with my hands and try to physically stretch the glass lips of the mirror into a smile.
That would be absurd.
Totally unhinged. The only logical course of action is to shift my own facial muscles, to smile myself, knowing the reflection has to instantaneously follow suit.
Yet, when we transition from the bathroom mirror to the mirror of our life circumstances,
Reaching out and clawing at the glass is exactly what we do.
it's our default behavior. When we see a reflection in our life that we don't like, a declining business metric, a failing relationship, our instinct is to yell at the mirror.
We try to force the reflection's arm to move from the outside.
Which the documents call overacting.
Overacting. Let's unpack that term.
It's defined as taking frantic, desperate action born out of a state of stress and lack. It's harboring this illusion that if you just exert enough physical effort, you can force reality to alter its reflection.
While your internal state is still locked in a frown.
Exactly.
You know, the concept of overacting clarifies so many real-world scenarios that usually seem totally unfair.
Like what?
Like in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You constantly see two different people with the exact same basic skills trying to grow similar businesses.
All this happens all the time.
Right. So person A drafts a pitch email.
Mm.
But they do it from a place of quiet confidence. They assume their product has value, they assume the recipient wants it, and they hit send.
And they get a phenomenal response rate.
Exactly. But then you have person B. They send the exact same email template, word for word. But person B is sweating over the keyboard. They're panicked about making rent, desperate for a yes.
And they hit send and get absolute silence.
Crickets. But the physical action, the typing, the clicking was identical. Why was the outcome so wildly different?
The divergence happens because the underlying vibration, the invisible internal state, was fundamentally different. Person B, the frantic one, was overacting.
They were clawing at the mirror.
Yes. They were operating under the assumption that their reality was fractured and required frantic intervention to be fixed.
But texts present a really challenging concept here regarding free will, don't they?
They do. We firmly believe we exercise total free will in our physical actions. But the documents suggest those actions are actually downstream occurrences.
Like they're the final dominoes to fall.
Exactly. Your core assumptions today produce your thoughts. Your thoughts generate the specific ideas that pop into your head, and those ideas compel the actions you take.
It's a rigid cascade.
It is. If you're aligned internally, if you're already smiling, the necessary action flows naturally, almost effortlessly.
But if you're out of alignment, panicking, you're just aggressively polishing the glass of a mirror, wondering why your reflection still looks terrified.
That's the trap.
Okay, but my logical, pragmatic brain immediately wants to mount a defense against this philosophy.
I expect nothing less. Lay it on me.
Well, effort, hard work, physical intervention, these are the currencies of progress in the material world. So let me propose a scenario to test this framework.
Go for it.
Let's say I go to a premium furniture store. I buy this beautifully crafted wooden dining table. The delivery truck arrives. They unload the boxes in my dining room, and when I open them, it's a splintered, broken, unusable mess.
A total disaster.
Right. So, according to the logic we're discussing, if I shouldn't claw at the mirror, I shouldn't take action, right?
Yeah.
Should I just sit on my floor, stare at the broken pieces of wood, and peacefully hallucinate that the table is whole?
That is the most common defense against this framework.
Doesn't this whole philosophy subtly advocate for absolute passivity and, frankly, delusion?
It's a valid question, but the broken table is actually the perfect test case to prove the opposite. The documents would absolutely never advocate for sitting on your floor and hallucinating.
Okay, good. Because that sounds crazy.
What they would do is point out a fundamental structural error in how you're categorizing the problem itself. Let's trace the life cycle of that table.
Okay.
You don't stand in your dining room screaming at the wood, expecting the splinters to animate and reassemble themselves, right?
Right, that would be yelling at the reflection.
So what is the actual structural solution to a broken delivery?
Well, the solution requires going back to the source. I have to contact the company, inform them of the error, and request a replacement.
You go back to the factory that produced the item. You recognize that a manufacturing or shipping error occurred somewhere along the supply chain.
So I change the order at the source.
Exactly. The factory processes the new order, and eventually a new, unbroken table is delivered to your home.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The profound psychological shift the texts demand is the realization that your physical external world is not the factory.
My bank account is not the factory.
Your job is not the factory. The physical world is entirely relegated to the role of the shipping department.
Wow.
It is simply the delayed delivery of what your internal factory, your consciousness, your recurring assumptions has already manufactured and shipped out.
It's the delay that confuses us.
Yeah.
Because thoughts don't manifest instantly as physical objects. If they did, our lives would be chaotic beyond measure.
Completely chaotic.
So because there's a time buffer, we assume the physical world is permanent. We think the physical world is the origin point rather than just the shipping department.
Yes. The reality you are navigating right now, today, is simply the arrival of past orders.
Orders I placed weeks, months, or even years ago.
With your dominant assumptions, your repetitive thoughts, your deeply held beliefs about your own worth.
So when I look at the broken table of my current circumstances, like a sudden debt or a rejection, and I react with panic and anger, what am I mechanically doing in that moment?
You are essentially picking up the phone, calling the internal factory of your consciousness, and screaming, "Look at this broken table. It's incredibly real. It's ruining my life, and I'm furious about it."
Which the factory hears as.
As a command. Manufacture more broken tables exactly like this one.
Oh man, because my intense emotional reaction is interpreted by the factory as a new order for the exact same product.
Precisely. By overacting and stressing out over the current reality, you are literally placing a back order for more stress. You guarantee tomorrow's delivery will be identical to today's.
The texts are adamant that the physical world we call objective reality is really just an assumptive reality. It's a solidified echo.
A solidified echo, that's good. Whatever you assume to be true internally will, given the buffer of time, solidify into external physical fact.
So the mandate is clear. You have to stop reacting to the deliveries. Stop auditing the shipping department.
And instead, walk onto the factory floor and begin managing the production line.
Which introduces a highly concerning question for me.
What's that?
If the external world is just a delayed reflection, who or what is actually running the factory floor inside our minds? Because, speaking from personal experience, and I bet you listening right now can relate most days, it feels like this factory manager is a highly caffeinated, deeply anxious entity just panicking over spreadsheets and pulling random levers.
Shouting about impending doom.
Yes. So who is pulling the levers?
Identifying that entity leads us to one of the most profound psychological concepts in this entire collection of documents. The inherent split within human consciousness.
The split.
To effectively manage the internal factory, you have to understand who is legitimately in charge and who is the unauthorized imposter causing all the chaos.
And the texts introduce a very stark division here.
They do. On one side, you have the ego. On the other side, you have the observer.
Grasping this split isn't just about intellectual agreement, though. You have to actually experience it. And there's this brilliant, spontaneous cognitive exercise in the texts designed to prove this split exists inside you right now.
The polar bear exercise. Let's do it.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this, provided you're in a safe environment and, not operating a heavy vehicle, close your eyes for a brief moment. I want you to project an image into your mind.
Just a simple image.
Picture a polar bear. Just visualize it standing in this vast expanse of white snow. Notice the white fur, the contrast of the black nose, that heavy lumbering stance. Just hold that image clearly in your mental space.
Okay, now let's dissect the precise mechanics of what just occurred in your consciousness during that exercise.
Because it's wild when you think about it.
If you are currently seeing a polar bear in your mind's eye, a specific mechanism inside of you had to generate that image. It had to pull the concept of a polar bear from your memory and project it onto the screen of your mind.
But simultaneously, another distinct mechanism inside of you is actively looking at that image.
Yes. The creation and the observation are happening concurrently.
There is the projector playing the film, and there is the audience sitting in the theater watching the film.
The crucial paradigm-altering question the text pose is this. Which of those two entities is the real you?
Is it the mechanism that generated the thought of the bear, or is it the silent awareness that is observing the bear?
The conclusion drawn is that your true identity is the observer.
You are the listener. You are that silent, formless awareness in the background that simply witnesses the thought.
The observer represents your pure potential. It's the unconditioned consciousness you possessed the moment you were born, long before society assigned you a name or a class or a set of limitations.
The observer doesn't age. It doesn't judge. It doesn't panic.
It doesn't project into the future or lament the past. It just acts as a pure lens of awareness.
But then you have the ego.
Right. The ego, conversely, is the highly active voice constantly producing narrative. And crucially, it produces narratives you did not consciously request.
Oh, tell me about it. The ego is the voice that rehearses imaginary arguments with your boss while you're just trying to take a shower.
Exactly. It's the voice that catastrophizes about a minor financial hurdle, spinning it into this vivid vision of total bankruptcy.
It's the voice that judges the appearance of strangers on the street.
And the tragedy of the human condition is that the vast majority of us navigate our entire lives entirely identified with the ego.
We operate under the delusion that we are the voice.
We think, I am my anxious thoughts. I am my worries. We surrender our identity to whatever random fear-based thought the ego decides to generate on any given Tuesday.
Going back to the movie theater analogy, it captures it perfectly. We buy a ticket, we sit in the dark, and we become so utterly engrossed in the terrifying thriller playing on the screen that our heart rate spikes.
We grip the armrests.
Yeah. We completely forget that we are entirely safe, sitting in a comfortable chair, merely watching light projected onto a wall. We lose ourselves in the drama of the ego.
We really do.
But taking this concept further reveals a paradox.
Let's hear it.
If our true nature is this powerful, silent observer, this pure, unbothered potential, why is the human experience often so agonizing? Like, why do we feel physically awful when we stress about a mortgage payment or a failing relationship? Why does anxiety manifest as a literal tightness in the chest?
It's a great question, and the texts provide a deeply mechanical, incredibly liberating explanation for the phenomenon of emotional pain.
They suggest a total reframing of negative emotions, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They are not punishments from a cruel universe. They aren't indicators that you are fundamentally broken.
So what are they?
They constitute a highly sophisticated internal alarm system. To understand this, consider the observer, your core consciousness, as holding the absolute blueprint of your ultimate truth.
And that truth is that you are inherently powerful, infinitely abundant, and totally capable.
The observer knows no limitation. Now imagine a scenario where a bill arrives in the mail. Your ego analyzes the bank account, panics, and produces a definitive thought. I am never going to get out of debt. I am trapped.
That's the classic visceral morning trap narrative we talked about earlier.
Exactly. When the ego generates that thought, an immediate violent friction occurs within your consciousness. It is a fundamental mismatch of frequencies.
Because the pure potential of the observer recognizes instantly that the ego is lying.
Yes. The ego is attempting to establish a false limitation as a concrete fact. The observer knows your true nature is infinite capability. The ego is claiming absolute helplessness.
And that friction, that massive dissonance between the truth of what you are and the limiting lie you are entertaining is registered by the physical body as a negative emotion.
Feeling bad is literally just your inner alarm system sounding off.
It's warning you, attention. You have accepted a falsehood. You are currently believing a lie about your own nature.
The liberation that comes from fully integrating this concept is profound. When you feel terrible stressing over a bill, you aren't feeling bad because the bill is this insurmountable objective reality that will destroy you.
You feel bad because in that specific moment, you are choosing to align your consciousness with a false limitation.
You're utilizing the immense power of your internal factory to place an order for powerlessness, which directly contradicts your true design.
The pain is just the system trying to correct you.
Exactly.
That reframing completely dismantles the terror of anxiety. Anxiety isn't a prophecy that my life is doomed. It is simply a dashboard indicator light telling me that my internal factory is printing a lie.
And the manager is pulling the fire alarm to wake you up.
Wow. But resolving that leads to the next logical obstacle.
Which is?
If we're fundamentally this powerful observer and our core truth is unlimited potential, how do we become so violently disconnected from it? How did the ego become the dominant voice?
And where did it get all these limiting scripts and fears in the first place?
Right. Where did they come from?
The origin of these limitations requires an honest examination of how human identity is constructed from infancy. The documents are unequivocal in this. The limiting beliefs that torture us are rarely, if ever, our own original creations.
They're hand-me-downs.
They are inherited software programs. We absorb them osmotically from our parents, our socioeconomic environment, our cultural media, early encounters with failure.
And the texts describe this mandatory process, a self-perception reset, that is absolutely required to strip away these absorbed identities before we can consciously direct the factory.
The source material provides a really vivid, almost comedic analogy to capture the absurdity of carrying these inherited beliefs.
Well, I love the pink house analogy. Let me walk the listener through this one.
Please do.
So visualize this scenario. Imagine you recently bought a home and you invite a close friend over for the first time to see it. Your friend pulls into the driveway and they're instantly taken aback because the exterior of your house is painted this obnoxious, blinding, offensive shade of neon pink.
A terrible choice.
It's awful. But they cautiously follow you inside for the tour. You lead them down a hallway and into this specific room. The room is dreary, poorly lit. The furniture is uncomfortable.
And on the wall,
hanging prominently right in the center of the largest wall, is this massive framed picture with the words childhood trauma written in bold, stark letters.
It is a deliberate, highly specific aesthetic choice.
Right. So your friend turns to you, utterly baffled, and asks, why on earth did you choose to paint your house neon pink? And what is the purpose of this depressing room and that framed text?
And you look at them with complete sincerity and reply.
You say, oh, I absolutely despise the color pink. I hate coming home to it. But my mother picked it out, so that's the color. And my parents handed me that framed picture when I moved out and told me I had to display it prominently, so I arranged the whole room around it.
When presented in the context of physical real estate, the absurdity is impossible to ignore.
Right. No functional grown adult would allow someone else to dictate the exterior color of their own home.
Nor would they force themselves to look at ugly, depressing art every single day simply because it was given to them.
Yet the texts argue this is the exact architecture of our internal mental landscape.
We are walking around day after day, living in an internal space decorated entirely by the anxieties, fears, and limitations of other people.
And the real-world translations of this are everywhere. Like, I am terrible at managing money because my father always said our family was bad at math.
Or, I cannot trust anyone because I witnessed my parents' marriage end in betrayal.
I will never be successful because I grew up in a town where no one succeeds. We blindly accept these hand-me-down furniture pieces of trauma and limitation.
And we arrange the entire trajectory of our lives around them. We suffer from a complete amnesia regarding our own agency.
We forget that we are the sole owner of the house. We hold the deed. We can buy a bucket of paint and change the color whenever we choose.
We can take the picture off the wall and throw it in the trash.
It represents the ultimate abdication of responsibility over the internal factory. We allow past conditioning and the voices of others to write the daily manufacturing orders.
And dismantling this requires recognizing that it goes even deeper than singular traumatic events. It is also deeply embedded in the repetitive, mundane, daily thoughts we allow to loop continuously.
Which brings up another great analogy from the material, the concept of the bad pop song.
This perfectly illustrates the mechanics of repetitive thought.
Think about being on a long road trip. driving through an area with only one radio station. And the station plays an incredibly catchy but objectively terrible pop song.
It has a repetitive, grating chorus that gets under your skin.
But because you have no other options, you leave the radio on. You are subjected to that exact same song for 10 hours straight.
The neurological consequence of that exposure is inevitable. By the time you finally reach your destination and lie down to sleep, that song is going to be playing on a relentless loop in your head.
You'll hear the chorus echoing in the silence. You won't be able to consciously switch it off.
Now, analyze your relationship to that song in that moment. Does the fact that the song is currently playing on a loop inside your head mean that you wrote the song?
No.
Does it mean that the lyrics represent your deepest, truest identity?
Obviously not.
Does it mean you even like the song?
Absolutely not. It simply means that repetition occurred. The loop is a mechanical result of prolonged exposure, nothing more.
Drawing the parallel to our internal dialogue is vital here. When you experience a looping, intrusive thought like, I am always going to struggle financially, or I am unlovable, or I have terrible luck, the texts urge you to radically detach from it.
Recognize that this thought is just a bad pop song playing on the jukebox of your internal diner.
The ego heard that song somewhere in the past, maybe from a stressed parent talking about bills, maybe from a societal narrative, or a single moment of rejection.
The origin doesn't even matter. The ego heard the song, found it familiar, and just kept hitting play.
The danger is the false identification. Because the song is playing inside our own heads in our own voice, we make the fatal error of assuming, well, it's in my head, therefore it must be me.
It must be a fundamental truth about who I am.
But returning to the earlier concept, you are the observer. You are the sole proprietor of the diner. You do not have to identify with the music playing on the jukebox.
You possess the agency to simply acknowledge the noise without engaging it. You can observe the thought, say to yourself, there is that terrible song about scarcity playing again, and physically, mentally reach over and unplug the machine.
You can consciously choose to put on a new record.
Let's apply this to physical health. If you have chronic knee pain and the old song begins to play, my body is falling apart, this knee is always going to hurt, I am getting old.
You must recognize it as an old recording. You don't argue with the song because arguing is still listening to it. You simply select a new track. My body possesses an incredible capacity for healing. I am directing energy toward restoration.
The diner analogy is so empowering because it removes the guilt. You own the diner, but you are not the annoying music.
Exactly.
However, synthesizing what we've discussed so far leaves us with a massive practical gap.
Okay, let's address the gap.
We've established the theory. The external world is a delayed delivery of our internal factory. We understand our identity. We are the powerful observer, not the loud ego. And we know we have to unplug the bad music and repaint the house.
Right.
But how? What is the actual tangible, mechanical process for commanding this change in the real world? Because if we just tell people to think happy thoughts, we're doing them a massive disservice.
A huge disservice. It can't just be about forced positivity. We've all tried that. And it rarely sustains itself.
Exactly.
The documents delve into what could be described as the metaphysical mechanics, the actual physics, of how reality expands and solidifies. The core operating principle here is that every single physical manifestation in your life began its existence as an internal word, a concentrated thought, or a sustained intention. And the crucial mechanism is this. The universe expands in the exact, literal, mathematical direction of the internal vocabulary we utilize.
We need to ground that in a tangible visualization. What does the direction of our internal vocabulary actually look like in practice?
The texts provide a spatial framework to understand this. They ask us to envision human consciousness as existing upon a massive, infinite map of polarities.
A map of polarities.
Imagine an endless grid stretching out in all directions. On one side of a horizontal axis, you have the absolute polarity of ease. On the exact opposite end, you have the absolute polarity of struggle.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
On a vertical axis, you have wealth versus lack, health versus sickness, love versus isolation. This map represents all possible human experiences.
So where do our thoughts come in?
Every single time you hold an internal assumption, every time you speak a word with conviction or entertain a deep emotional feeling, you are taking a literal, measurable step on this map in that specific direction.
Let's trace a typical morning commute on this map then. I wake up and I instantly start dreading the day. I get in my car, Someone cuts me off in traffic, and my internal dialogue explodes into a rant about how everyone is incompetent and my commute is always a nightmare.
According to this framework, you are not just venting steam, you are actively walking on the map.
I am taking deliberate steps toward the polarity of struggle and conflict.
Yes. You are utilizing your capacity as the observer to command the universe to expand your reality in the direction of struggle. You are actively submitting an order to the internal factory, requesting more situations that match that exact vibration of conflict.
And the universe delivers it.
Because the universe, or the field of pure potential, is endlessly expansive and entirely non-judgmental, it will gladly oblige your request. It doesn't decide what is good or bad for you. It only fulfills the order.
So it will construct a reality that provides me with more coworker drama, more traffic jams, more appliances breaking down, more empirical reasons to justify my feeling of struggle. This framework immediately invites a very common, very frustrated rebuttal. I hear people say all the time, but I try so hard to be positive. I wake up and say my affirmations in the mirror. I have a vision board. I journal my gratitude. But things still go wrong. My bank account is still empty.
They wonder why they aren't seeing results if they're deliberately taking steps toward wealth and ease.
Right. Why doesn't it work for them?
That frustration is universal, and it introduces one of the most critical pitfalls identified in the source material. It is the phenomenon of part-time reality generation.
Part-time generation.
To understand why affirmations often fail, let's return to the map of polarities and run the math on a typical day.
Okay, let's run the numbers.
Let's say per person dedicates 5 minutes in the morning to their personal development routine. They close their eyes, they regulate their breathing, they visualize success, and they state, I am capable, I am at peace, abundance flows to me effortlessly.
In doing so, they genuinely take one solid, intentional step toward the polarity of ease.
It's a victory, momentarily, but then the meditation timer chimes, they open their eyes, they pick up their phone and see an unexpected invoice from a mechanic.
Oh no.
And for the next 9 hours of their waking day, their internal dialogue is a frantic, uninterrupted loop of, how am I going to pay this? Why is everything so expensive? I can never catch a break. I am always behind.
Wow. Let's calculate the movement on the map. What has mechanically happened?
You tell me.
The math is brutal. They took one deliberate step toward ease at 7 a.m., and then they sprinted 50 steps toward struggle between 8:00 a.m. and 5:00 p.m.
Precisely. They are attempting to offset a hurricane with a desk fan.
It's a brutal analogy, but it's so accurate.
You can think of it as inflating a massive balloon. For 9 hours, they are pumping dense, heavy air into a massive balloon of struggle. 5 minutes of positive affirmation is a pinprick.
The universe responds to the aggregate sum.
Yes. The internal factory responds to your dominant baseline. You cannot part-time manifest a new reality. If your default, chronic, resting state of being is anxiety and lack, those 5 minutes of morning peace are mathematically insignificant.
To truly alter the trajectory, you must consistently, relentlessly choose the opposite direction until that old, massive balloon of struggle finally runs out of air and deflates.
Synthesizing that, it's like compound interest but for emotional states. If you invest daily in anxiety, the dividends you receive are chaotic circumstances.
And what makes this realization intimidating is the profound level of self-responsibility it demands. It implies that every passing thought, every subtle reaction, is an active financial investment in a future reality.
Yes, heavy realization.
It's like having a leaky pipe in the basement of your internal house that is constantly flooding the floor with negative assumptions, and you're standing at the top of the stairs with a tiny sponge of morning affirmations, wondering why the house is still slowly sinking.
The demand for responsibility is absolute. When the texts assert that everything is words, they are expanding the definition of vocabulary. They don't just mean the spoken English language.
I mean your internal dialogue.
Your fleeting intentions, your bodily posture, your emotional baseline. Every heavy sigh of frustration at a red light, every slumped shoulder when you look at a bill, every eye roll at a colleague is an intention being broadcast.
It's a word spoken into the factory.
You are constantly, unceasingly telling the machinery what to build. There are no off-the-record moments in consciousness.
But if there are no off-the-record moments, we hit a massive practical wall. Understanding this map philosophically is one thing. The theory is airtight. But how does a human being with a job, a family, and real-world stressors practically navigate this without going insane.
It sounds impossible.
Because attempting to hyper-monitor every single thought 24 hours a day sounds exhausting. It sounds like turning personal development into just another highly stressful, anxiety-inducing chore. And if I'm stressing about my thoughts, I'm just manifesting more struggle.
Right, you're back in the trap.
How do we actually shift the factory orders without turning our own minds into a surveillance state?
That is the pivotal transition of the entire philosophy. The documents recognize that hypervigilance is a trap of the ego. They do not leave you with this crushing philosophical burden without providing a mechanism for execution.
Okay, good. So they give us tools.
They offer a suite of incredibly specific, highly practical, and somewhat unconventional tools. These exercises are not designed to force you to police every thought. Instead, they are designed to fundamentally alter your resting baseline, locking in a new state of being naturally.
They transition you away from that exhausting energy of trying to force a result and move you into the peaceful state of already having it.
Let's transition into this toolkit because this is where the theory meets the pavement.
Let's do it. And instead of just listing these tools, let's frame them against the specific roadblocks we just discussed. The first major roadblock is our complete lack of awareness. We have these leaky pipes in the basement, but we don't even know they're leaking. We think we're being positive, but our baseline is actually anxiety.
The first tool mentioned in the text addresses this directly. It is called the review of perception.
The review of perception. How does it work?
It is a brutal, uncompromising, but ultimately liberating audit of your internal factory orders. The instructions are deceptively simple. At the end of your day, immediately before you go to sleep, take a physical piece of paper and write down exactly what your dominant internal assumptions were throughout the day.
The critical distinction here is that you're not writing down a diary of what happened to you, right?
Exactly. You are recording what you assumed, what you felt, and what specific tracks your internal jukebox was playing.
So to clarify, I'm not writing, today I got a flat tire on the highway and then my boss yelled at me.
No.
I'm writing, today, when the tire blew, I immediately assumed the universe was out to get me. I felt deeply victimized and my internal dialogue was playing the song, why does everything always go wrong for me?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
You are tracking the invisible data, and the documents promise that if you execute this audit with radical honesty for even 3 or 4 consecutive days, you will experience a paradigm-shifting revelation.
What happens?
You will lay that piece of paper next to the actual events of your week. You will look at the list of your chronic internal assumptions, your fears, judgments, expectations of failure, and then you will look at the external reality you experienced, and you will witness a perfect mathematical one-to-one match.
Wow.
You will realize, perhaps for the first time in your life, that the bad day did not cause your bad mood. Your chronic assumption of struggle manufactured the circumstances of the bad day.
It removes the veil of randomness.
It forces you to concede that the internal factory is not broken. It is working with terrifying efficiency. It is simply fulfilling the terrible orders you keep submitting.
It destroys the illusion of coincidence. Once you see the math on paper, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
You realize, oh, I walked into a restaurant, I ordered the struggle meal, I paid for it with my anxiety, and the waiter delivered it hot and fresh to my table. I cannot blame the waiter.
You cannot blame the waiter.
Which naturally leads to the second roadblock.
Yeah.
Once we realize we're ordering the wrong meals, we try to fix it by visualizing what we want. But the way most people visualize actually keeps them stuck in lack.
Which is where the second tool comes in. It's called One Step Further.
Let's break down one step further. It addresses the psychological gap between wanting a thing and having a thing.
When most people attempt to manifest or visualize a goal, they focus their mental energy on the moment of getting it. If their goal is a major promotion at work, they close their eyes and visualize the dramatic moment.
The boss calling them into the office, the handshake.
The signing of the new contract, the rush of adrenaline, the celebratory dinner. They imagine the thrill of the win.
Which feels great in the moment. It provides a dopamine hit. So why do the texts argue that this approach is fundamentally flawed?
Because if you are visualizing the dramatic moment of getting the promotion, you are firmly, undeniably anchoring your current identity as the person who does not yet have it.
Oh, because the excitement implies a transition.
Yes, the very excitement of the acquisition implies a transition from not having to having. You are maintaining a vibrational distance between yourself and the goal. By focusing on the chase, you are instructing the factory to manufacture a reality where you are continually chasing the promotion.
You manifest the pursuit, not the possession.
Precisely.
So how do we operationalize going one step further?
It requires a shift in temporal focus.
Yeah.
You must bypass the celebratory, adrenaline-fueled moment of acquisition entirely. You must embody the psychological state of the person who already possesses the goal as a normal fact of life.
You move past the handshake.
You ask yourself a fundamentally different question. What does the person who has been in that higher role for 6 months do on a random Tuesday morning?
Oh, I love the Tuesday morning concept. Let's build that out. The person who has been the vice president for 6 months doesn't wake up on a Tuesday morning jumping up and down on their bed, screaming with adrenaline because they have the title.
The novelty has worn off.
They wake up, they feel a quiet, grounded sense of competence. They're probably just calmly drinking their coffee, reviewing a mundane agenda, and thinking about the logistics of their day.
The frequency of true possession is not frantic excitement. It is calm, boring normalcy. If your goal is extreme wealth, you do not visualize finding a duffel bag of cash and weeping with joy.
Wealthy people don't weep when they buy groceries.
They simply swipe the card with absolute, mundane, unremarkable certainty that the funds are available. To utilize this tool, you have to assume the state of the wish fulfilled. You must normalize the desire within your internal factory until the novelty evaporates and it feels indistinguishable from a memory.
You must become the person on the Tuesday morning. Normalizing the desire is such a powerful concept. It is the death of desperation.
It really is.
But achieving that feeling of normalcy while your current reality still looks like a struggle is incredibly difficult. If I'm sitting in a cramped apartment, closing my eyes and pretending I'm the VP in a corner office often feels like pure delusion. My brain fights it.
And that is the third roadblock, the cognitive dissonance of visualization.
Right. And the texts offer what might be the most fascinating tool in the entire collection to bypass this. Future memory eyes open.
It is a remarkable, highly sophisticated psychological hack. The instruction directly contradicts standard meditative practices.
Usually when we meditate, visualize, or attempt to do inner work, the very first instruction is always close your eyes. The logic is that you must shut out the physical data of the real world in order to vividly construct the imaginary world.
And this specific exercise demands the exact opposite.
It instructs you to keep your eyes wide open. You stare directly at your current, physical, perhaps highly undesirable surroundings. And while anchoring your vision in the present reality, you speak out loud and narrate a story about your future success.
But you phrase the narrative entirely in the past tense as if it occurred months or years ago.
To ensure clarity, let's construct a practical example of how this sounds in execution. Imagine I am an entrepreneur, and I'm currently sitting at a cheap, wobbly desk in my cramped living room, agonizing over a pitch to a massive client that could save my business. I am terrified.
A very relatable scenario.
Instead of closing my eyes and pretending I'm on a yacht, which my brain knows is a lie, I keep my eyes open. I look at the cheap desk. I look at the peeling paint on the wall. I take in the physical reality of the struggle.
And what do you say?
I say out loud.
Man.
I remember when I used to sit at this tiny, wobbly desk, sweating over that initial pitch. It feels like a lifetime ago. I was so incredibly stressed about money. But then 2 weeks later, they signed the contract, and it completely revolutionized the business. Now, looking back at this whole department, I just have to laugh at how terrified I was, not knowing it was all about to work out perfectly.
The psychological mechanics at play here are astounding. Let's analyze why keeping the eyes open is the absolute linchpin of this technique's efficacy.
Okay, lay it out for us.
When you close your eyes and visualize a desired outcome, your brain's categorizing system knows you are imagining. It flags the incoming data and places it firmly in the fantasy or daydream folder. It does not treat it as a hard command for the factory.
But when your eyes are open,
Your optic nerve is feeding the brain tangible, undeniable physical data, the texture of the desk, the lighting of the room, the specific spatial dimensions. The brain registers. This is reality.
simultaneously you are layering an auditory narrative over that physical data, but formatting it as a memory. You are actively hacking the brain's encoding process.
You are inducing a highly controlled form of cognitive dissonance, but resolving it in favor of your goal. You are confusing the ego in the best way possible.
You are forcing your consciousness to synthesize the undeniable physical reality with the assumed reality of the wish fulfilled.
By tethering the future state to the present physical environment, you anchor it as a tangible memory. From the perspective of the observer, the pure consciousness that operates the factory, there is no qualitative difference between a genuine memory of the past and a vividly assumed memory of the future.
Because the factory only knows what you are currently assuming.
By speaking the desire as an eyes-open memory, You completely bypass the ego's resistance mechanism. The ego cannot categorize it as a mere fantasy because you are integrating it with the physical room. The brain accepts the synthesis, and the order is placed at the factory with undeniable concrete certainty.
It is essentially performing an inception on your own consciousness.
That's a great way to describe it.
But let's look at the final roadblock.
Yeah.
What happens when someone learns these tools? They start doing the perception audits, they try to embody the Tuesday morning energy, they start doing the eyes open memory hacks, and they become obsessive.
Ah, yes, when the tools become the problem.
What happens when a person turns the tools themselves into a metric for success? They start worrying, did I do my eyes open memory correctly? Was my visualization vivid enough? Am I taking enough steps on the map today? The tools themselves become the new source of anxiety.
When that occurs, they have subtly fallen back into the very first trap we discussed, the trap of trying.
They have weaponized the personal development tools to overact.
They are using the tools to aggressively scrub the mirror. And this brings us to the final and perhaps most liberating tool documented in the texts, the every method method.
Which, as I understand it, essentially translates to, when you are overwhelmed, drop everything and walk away. Abandon the tools entirely.
That is the precise instruction. If you find yourself stressing over your teens, if you are paralyzed by the fear that you didn't say your affirmations with enough conviction, or if you are meticulously counting your steps on the map of polarities, you have entirely lost the plot.
The texts ask you to analyze your vibration in that moment. What are you actually assuming when you stress about your routine?
Exactly. If I am stressing about doing the routine perfectly, I am fundamentally assuming that I do not have the goal yet, and that I must labor intensely to convince the universe to deliver it to me.
I am no longer manifesting wealth or health. I am manifesting the identity of a person who is struggling to do manifestation routines correctly.
You have re-entered the frequency of lack. The every method is the radical, profound act of surrender. It posits that sometimes the most powerful, commanding action you can take to alter your reality is to do absolutely nothing.
Cease the affirmations. You close the gratitude journal. You stop analyzing your thoughts.
You go to the beach, you read a fiction novel, you sit on the floor and play with your dog. You engage in a hobby that has zero productive value.
For someone addicted to trying, the idea of ignoring the goal to achieve the goal sounds terrifying. It feels irresponsible. How does doing nothing mechanically aid the process?
The mechanics are beautiful in their simplicity. By walking away and engaging in pure existence, you are physically embodying the ultimate state of having. Consider the factory analogy one final time. If you truly, deeply, in your bones, knew that the internal factory had already received your exact order, and that the physical delivery of your desire was absolutely guaranteed and currently in transit, what would your behavior be?
Would I stand by the mailbox, sweating, panicking, checking my watch every 5 seconds?
Right. Would you?
No. If I knew the check was in the mail and guaranteed to arrive, I would go about my day, I would relax, I would focus on other things. The anxiety would be entirely gone.
Rest is the ultimate, undeniable proof of faith in the mechanism. By resting, by enjoying the present moment without desperately needing it to change or improve, you align yourself perfectly with the frequency of abundance and ease.
You are broadcasting a signal to the universe that says, I do not need to force this reality to change because I am already secure in the knowledge that it is mine.
You step out of the frantic, forceful energy of making it happen, and you sink into the receptive, calm, magnetic energy of allowing it to arrive. You stop trying to be, and you simply are.
It is the ultimate flex to the universe. Just putting your feet up, engaging in joy, and signaling, I know the work is done.
It really is.
These 4 tools, auditing your perception, moving past the excitement of hacking the brain with eyes open memories, and knowing when to completely surrender, are incredibly paradigm shifting. But as we synthesize all of this, they all seem to point toward one inescapable ultimate truth about human nature, consciousness, and how we experience the phenomenon of time.
They do. The overarching secret woven through all these documents, the grand synthesis of the factory floor, the map of polarities, and the practical tools can be distilled and encapsulated into a single, profound, terrifyingly powerful phrase. You are always right in your assumption.
You were always right, regardless of the content.
Whether you assume you are doomed to failure, or whether you assume you are destined for unparalleled greatness, the external reality will systematically bend, shift, and arrange itself to prove you correct.
The universe does not argue with your assumptions. It merely validates them.
Let us reflect on the broader philosophical implications of that truth. We spend the vast majority of our lives agonizing over the past. We let the traumas, the inherited beliefs, the old pop songs on the jukebox dictate our current identity.
We believe our history defines our trajectory.
Alternatively, we live in absolute terror of the future, constantly trying to brace ourselves against potential disasters, attempting to control outcomes that haven't happened yet. But the philosophical core of these texts asserts a radical perspective on time.
Which is that the past and the future do not actually exist in reality. They are illusions. They are merely mental constructs, placeholders within our consciousness.
There is no physical place called yesterday that you can travel to. There is no physical place called tomorrow.
There is only ever the present moment, the eternal, unbroken now.
The continuous present is the only arena where the factory operates. And whatever you assume to be true in this exact, specific, localized second is the active blueprint your internal factory is printing.
You are never reacting to a static, fixed reality. You are constantly, relentlessly creating it in real time.
We are not victims of circumstance. We are not permanently bound by the socioeconomic status of the family we were born into. We are not defined by the mistakes we made a decade ago. And we are certainly not defined by the balance in our bank accounts this morning.
We are the sole, uncontested architects of our experience.
Because of that architecture, we possess an infinite, staggering capability to pivot at any given second. In any moment, you can pause, recognize an old, limiting assumption, identify it as a lie, and simply choose to turn and walk in a new direction on the map of polarities.
You have the authority to unplug the jukebox.
You have the resources to repaint the internal house. You can finally stop the exhausting process of trying to achieve a life and simply start being the person who lives it.
It fundamentally rewrites the contract of what it means to be alive.
Wow.
It moves you from the terrifying position of being a helpless passenger in a runaway vehicle to recognizing that you have been holding the steering wheel the entire time.
Exactly.
So to bring this entire exploration full circle, think back to that morning trap we discussed at the very beginning.
The physiological cascade, the alarm, the phone, the sudden visceral drop in your stomach.
Exactly. The panic of the delivery. Take a look around you right now in this exact moment, wherever you happen to be listening to this. Look at the dimensions of the room you're in. Look at the device playing this audio.
Consider the clothes you are wearing, the relationships you currently hold, the specific life you are leading today.
Realize fully and completely that every single bit of it, the good, the bad, and the mundane, is just a delayed reflection of what you have been assuming up until this point. It's just an old box delivered from the factory.
It has no power to bind you to tomorrow.
Now that you understand the mechanics, now that you know you hold the pen, now that you know the observer is awake and the factory is waiting in total silence for your next command,
Right.
what is the very next sentence you are going to write?